turned around and I talked to the people. And I told the people what was going on in the southern part of this country. And how slaves were getting whipped. How slaves were getting beat and mistreated and hung. I have you know, those white people, they were unbelievably. Because they stood up at the end of my presentation and gave me a standing ovation. Yes. And afterwards, Mr. Garrison got back on the mic at the podium and he said, "Did you just finish hearing an animal?" And all the audience said, "No." He said, "Do you want this man to go back to slavery?" "No." Well, after that, ma'am, guess what? He hired me to be one of his anti-slavery lecturers. And when he hired me, there went the $10 and there went the $6. Because he was paying me $25 a presentation. And guess what? We spoke for like 6 months around the country. And I will let you know that there were times that I spoke and I got charged from the audience. I got charged in such a way that some of those men, who were starched slave owners, they would run up on the stage and they would want to fight me. Well, in the midst of the fighting, thank God they didn't destroy my right hand. Yes, they damaged my left, but they didn't destroy my right. And I'm so happy that they didn't, because this right hand gave me the opportunity to write my first book, The Narrative and Life of Frederick Douglass. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll have you know that book was not believed. It was not believed that I, a black man, wrote this book. The word was going around that I was just used with the picture on the cover, that I was not intelligent enough to write a book. And I have you know, that book sold 5,000 copies. And it was written in 5 different languages. And also, guess what? William Lloyd Garrison told me, "That's a wonderful book you wrote. You told on your masters and everything. I'm taking you down to the shipyard, putting you on a ship and get you out of here." Well, I went to the shipyard and I got on that ship and I got out of there and I went to Canada. From Canada, I went to New England. And ladies and gentlemen, when I got to New England, everywhere I spoke, standing room only, I would go to the restaurants. They would let me in. As a matter of fact, one day, I was sitting outside the restaurant, just gathering my thoughts. And as I'm sitting there, I got a visit. The visit was from a little doggy. Yeah. The little doggy came up, he sat there for a minute, and then he managed to lift himself up, and he put his paws right here as he was, looking me in my face. And then he spoke. He spoke. "Oh! Oh! 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 Oh!" And it was almost like he was saying, "Don't worry, Negro, we love you over here, you can stay." And it looked like he had a little smile on his face. "Oh! Oh!" So I knew that I was in a good place when even a dog would come up to me and welcome me. Yes. Well, I was at a dignified event, and I'm sure you've probably all been to one of those sophisticated events where everybody got on suits and the women got on nice gowns, and the men, when they move, they just move their whole body so they don't wrinkle up their suit. And the women, they move real calm and steady, so the dress don't, the dress and the shoes, they don't get wrinkled or dirty. Well, I was at one of those occasions. And ma'am, I was standing there getting ready to sip on some wine, because I had on my new suit, and my hair was done up real nice, and I was smelling good. Yeah. Well, all of a sudden, there were 2 people there, 2 young ladies, Richardsons. They were sisters. And they approached me, and they said, "Mr. Douglass." And I said, "Yes." "We have you know that we sent $750 to your master, Hugh R. You are now a free man." And when she said that, I froze. And I had a glass of wine in my hand. And I have you know that I guzzled so quick you could hear the lump in my throat. And I just stirred out. I just left him, and I was like, wow, a free man. And then she said, "Mr. Douglass?" "Oh, yes, I'm sorry." And then she said, "You could send your family, you could bring your family over. You don't have to go back anymore. We'll supply you with a house and all the food that you need, etc., etc., a job." And I responded and I said, thank you so much, Ms. Richardson. However, I must be getting back to America. I must be getting back to America because there's still work to be done. My people are still enslaved. So I must make my way back. And that's what I did, ladies and gentlemen. I made my way back. And when I came back, one of the main reasons that I came back is because of that little girl right there. That's my baby girl, Anna. I came back in such a rush because she passed away. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the only picture on file of me and my baby girl. And this is the only picture that you'll ever see of me with somewhat a little smile on my face, because she was my heart. I didn't mention to you, since I talked about my little girl, that's my wife. This is my wife, Anna. And this is my 4 children. My baby girl, my oldest daughter, Rosetta. Rosetta moved forward, and she wound up, because I know the time is ticking, she wound up where, this is my baby girl, this is my girl, Rosetta. Now, I have you know that she worked with me all the way. And she even got to the point after her mother, Anna, passed away after 40 years of marriage. When she passed away in 1884. Rosetta, she came and she wrote, "My mother," as I recalled her. I'm sorry, I'm having a moment. My sons, Frederick Jr., Lewis, and George. Now, when I went to the White House and I talked to President Abraham Lincoln about the war and letting black men in the war, my son, he wound up being a recruiter such as myself. My other George son that I mentioned, Lewis, he became a lieutenant. They survived the war and they came back home. And I also share with you, just on a personal level, that I had 21 grandchildren living with me in my home in Anacostia. Now, I'll let you know also that if you notice all my pictures, you see there's neither one with a smile on my face. Behind closed doors, I was a very witty, fun-loving man. But I was told by Mr. Garrison, once I go outside, to never show a smile. You don't want them to see me with a smile because they would not take me serious. So I never smiled. Ladies and gentlemen, I have more pictures than or except one person. Anybody want to take a guess who that one person is? No, Mark Twain. Mark Twain has more pictures, and the reason he has more pictures than I do, because he traveled abroad and he had pictures taken of him overseas where I didn't. That's the only reason why Mark Twain beat me in the picture taking arena. And as I said, you never saw me smile, but once I got behind closed doors with my family, I was Mr. Witty, I was Mr. Fun Guy. As a matter of fact, so much so that my granddaughters used to play in my hair. They was amazed at my hair. That's why they called me the Lion of Anacostia, because of my hair. All right? But my granddaughters had a tendency of playing in my hair, and they would braid my hair, and they would put little ribbons in my hair. Well, one day, I didn't know, sir, that one of the councilmen came to the house from Washington, D.C. to discuss a very important topic. I didn't know he was coming, so I wound up making my way to the door, and guess what? When I opened up the door, to their amazement, Mr. Douglas! So right away, I slammed the door. Let me ask you something. Anybody ever saw The Jeffersons? Where George, he slams the door? That's what I did. I slammed the door and I raced back in the house to have my granddaughters take the ribbons and braids out of my hair. All right, so that I can meet with this man on a very important topic. Okay? I know that time is moving on. So also, my wife, as I mentioned, Anna was a very influential part of my life. She was very important to me because, quite naturally, because of her, I managed to escape. Because of her, I had 5 great children. Because of her, I ate. Because of her, she took care of me, if you will. The only thing that separated Anna and I is the fact that she never knew how to read. She was not a people person. But still, I loved her because she was my wife. And when she died, it took a lot out of me. As a matter of fact, it took so much out of me, I went into a Great Depression. I almost died myself. But I will share with you that thank God for the wonderful people that came to nurse me and to take care of me and to build my motivation and my self-esteem back up. And one of those persons that took the time to assure that I would come back and come back strong is no other than this young lady here. This young lady here is no other than Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman would visit me on a regular. As a matter of fact, I'll never forget the time that she came knocking on the door late at night. And Rosetta, my daughter, she screamed. She said, "Pop, Pop, it's Miss Tubman." And I responded by, "Let her in. What you waiting on?" So she came in. And I introduced her to my guest who was there maybe about 6, 7 months, Miss Griffin. Sir, can I tell you something? Mr. Garrison and I, we had a fallout. And we had a fallout because Mr. Garrison believed that the Constitution was working against freeing slaves. My idea of the Constitution was great for us because we could use that Constitution to free the slaves. Well, him and I, we got in a big dispute. So much so that when Miss Griffin was living with me, you know, helping me out with the newspaper, the North Star, he put in his paper that between you and me, sir, if this get out, I'm coming back from my grave. He put in his paper that deliberated that Miss Griffin and I was having a relationship. And ma'am, that was totally false. So that separated us as friends for a long time. So being that it did separate us, Miss Tubman, if you will, all right, she really became a great friend of mine. And she inspired me in many ways to move forward. And when she came in that night, yes, she met Miss Griffin. Matter of fact, ma'am, Miss Griffin offered her some tea. But Miss Griffin eventually, she would move on. She would go back to New England, or England, if you will. All right? So, again, because of Anna passing, it took a lot out of me. So much so, I had speaking engagements, but I just couldn't do it. But it did serve me in such a way, sir, that I wound up writing my second book. I wound up writing that famous speech about the 4th of July, all while I couldn't even get out of the bed. Yes, yes. So, that depression. But moving on, I want to share, because I know time is ticking, I want to share, see, I have this white woman here up here, and I have her up here not just to show white women that, hey, I'm not a racist, but I have her there because she plays a very important part in my life. Like what? 2 years after Anna passed away, Helen, she worked in my office. One day I asked Helen, I said, Helen, do you like Bach? She said, yes, Mr. Douglas. I said, would you like to accompany me to the concert? She said, yes. Well, that started a relationship. And she was 20 years younger than me. So I was 66, she was 46. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before long, her and I, we had the wedding bliss, and we got married. Ma'am, I'll let you know, even though it was a moment, my daughter Rosetta did not. My daughter Rosetta, she denounced it. She called Helen all kind of names. Yes, and even my own children. And her family just X'd her out. Yes. Well, as the families X'd us out, well, guess what? I had time on my hands because, you know, I had just quit being in charge of the firm in Haiti. I just quit that job because I didn't like what it entailed. So as I quit that job, I wound up taking my new wife, and we traveled all overseas. Unfortunately, most of the people that we went to go see, they had long passed. So we were welcomed by some of the children. And we stayed over there for maybe about 6 months, just traveling. And when I came back, only because of time, it was February the 20th, 1895. I had a speaking engagement, and I made my way via carriage to the Washington Convention Center in Washington, D.C. I was helped up to the stage. At this time, I'm 77 years old. At this time, I got diabetes. At this time, I have wooden teeth in my mouth. At this time, I got the shakes. But I was helped to the stage by the one and only Miss Susan D. Anthony. Since I mentioned her name, may I ask how many of you all have the Susan B. Anthony coins? Anybody have maybe about 5 or 10 of them? No? Oh, you do? Okay. And I ask that question because I honestly, myself, I do have 6 of them. And I've had them so long that they don't change colors. They're brown now. You know, so Susan is officially my sister. She went from being white to brown, my sister. So anyway, I spoke for women's suffrage because I was a big proponent of women's freedom. And she helped me, ma'am. She helped me back to the carriage. I made my way home. When I got home, I made my way to the door and inside. And as I walked inside, as a matter of fact, there's the front door right there on that green poster where you see me waving. All right, underneath the second picture, that's the door. I made my way past that door. And as I got past the door, Helen had company in the kitchen. And she said, "Frederick, would you like to eat?" As I'm making my way up the stairwell, I said, "No, I'm a rest because I have to go out and speak again." Well, as I got to the 4th stair, I jerked. And she hollered out, "Frederick, stop playing." And I said, "No, I'm not playing." So I took another step. And as I took that another step, I had a major heart attack. And the last board back there on the bottom, you see me laying there. True story is that on my visit to Anacostia in February of 2012 with my sister, as we were about to leave, coming down the stairwell, I asked the tour guide there, I said, "How did Frederick Douglass die?" He said, "Believe it or not, he died right where you're standing at." I said, "What do you mean?" He had a major heart attack on the stairwell, and he tumbled down the stairs, and he laid right there. So, ma'am, I asked the tour guide, "Well, can I lay there like I'm dead?" And he looked at my sister, and he said, "Is he okay?" She responded and said, "Don't worry about him. We just got him for the weekend because I got to take him back before the weekend. He's on leave from the crazy home, so don't worry." So I looked at her like, So he said, "Sure, go ahead." So I laid there, and the reason I did that because I wanted people to get an idea of how Frederick passed away. Now, please understand that was not 2023, but it was 1895. Quite naturally, back then, there was no phone, there was no vehicles. So Anna, as I went down, not Anna, but Helen, she grabbed me, and she opened up the front door screaming and hollering, "Help, help, my husband, he's dying." Well, sir, there was no help. So I passed away right there. Ladies and gentlemen, I became the first black man, not only to go into the White House, if you will, but I became the first black man to lay in state. They had me laying in state in the Congress building back then. And I had kings and queens and presidents from other countries to come and pay homage to me, which was a beautiful thing. Also, ladies and gentlemen, there's talk that I died as a poor man, broke man. When I died, I had $300,000 to my name. Now, you equate that to today. So I think you probably get 30 million out of it. So yes, I died as a rich man. And I also want to pay homage to my beautiful wife, my second wife, Helen Pitts, who grave site is right here. Just to give you an idea, that is me, that's Helen, and Anna, I think that's Anna right there. Well, thanks to Helen, who had to raise funds after my death. How did she raise funds? Well, she became a speaker, and she started traveling speaking. And the money that she brought in, that helped to save Anacostia on Cedar Hill. And when she passed away, believe it or not, so I'm going to talk to you again, believe it or not, my own children was against Helen and what she was trying to do for me. So much so that you know what they did? They took all the belongings and they left her the house. They said, you can have the house, but we're taking everything else, the money and everything else. Well, so much so that Helen managed to come up with the money that was needed to save Anacostia, and it wound up being saved in 1960. 1960. The Washington's Parks and Recreations took over Cedar Hill. And to this day, they own it. And every so often they refurbish it to make sure that it stands the test of time. Now these pictures here, as I get ready to wrap, this green board here, and the pictures that you see back there are some of the pictures that I took of the home of Anacostia. Now I say they took some of the furniture. However, a lot of the pictures that you see are still furniture that was left there. As a matter of fact, on the green board, the second picture to the left, or to the right, that is my hat that I used to wear out and about. And there's a picture of the cane that I was given by Mary Lincoln after I told the audience there that Abraham Lincoln, President Abraham Lincoln, was no friend to the black people. We were his stepchildren. But I will say that I do bow and I do respect him for signing the Emancipation Proclamation. After my speech, coming off the stage, that was Mary Lincoln standing there to give me Abraham Lincoln's